We feel like someone lied to us, and we're not even sure who. We had an amazing trip through Alaska this past summer, but we encountered so many things that were just different than we thought they were gonna be. Some good, some not so good, and some not good or bad, but just different.
Yeah, almost everything was just different.
Basically, between the reality TV shows and what you see on the internet, and the fact that we grew up in the state literally farthest away from Alaska, we had expectations going into this trip, and we thought we knew what to expect going to Alaska, but we were wrong. And today we're setting the record straight. We're also gonna go over our route, our favorite excursions, the cost of RVing to Alaska, and other key information, and let you know whether or not we would go to Alaska again at the end of this.
Was it worth it?
Was it worth it?
Was it worth it?
So stick around to the end of this video.
So we're gonna go over 10 things that were not what we thought they were.
First up being the roads.
Yeah, I feel like we were kind of misled on these roads.
Well, we were told they were going to be the worst roads ever, and they were going to destroy our RV, and that we were absolutely insane to take our brand new Brinkley to Alaska for the summer because the roads were just awful.
Yeah, and really the roads were not so bad. I mean, if you went super fast over them, they were plenty bad and probably would destroy your RV, but we went slow and the roads were not bad.
It is a lot of not so great roads altogether, and so there's some wear and tear that happens, but there's no single road that was just so bad, at least not that we drove on. We didn't do the road all the way up to the Arctic Circle.
No, that's probably pretty bad. So you guys saw that we did have some issues after we got out of Alaska, but overall the roads really were not that terrible.
Myth number 2, well, I won't say call them myths, but what we thought number 2, Alaska is the most remote place in the United States. There's not gonna be like anybody up there once you get there, right?
There was so many people everywhere. Every other vehicle on the road was an RV. And so if you can drive to it, there is a bunch of people there RVing.
Granted,
everybody.
I don't know if you've seen a map in the size of Alaska. It's huge.
It's huge with not very many roads. So again, if you can drive to it, there's a lot of people there.
Some places, Chicken, for example, like we said, we were like, this is the remote Alaska feel we were looking for.
Yeah, but there were still, even in the campground we stayed in for the one night, there was probably 20 to 30 people camping there. So it was, I mean, it's remote, but it's not as remote as we thought. We thought like...
It's remote but crowded. I guess it's remote but crowded.
It is, but you also still have more conveniences than I would have anticipated. For instance, like getting fuel was a lot easier, finding groceries was a lot easier. I will say though, there might have been a grocery store, but that grocery store might not have had everything that you thought it would have. So there is that aspect to it as well. For number 3 on our list, the weather. We knew it was supposed to be rainy, and it was rainy. However, we got a lot of sunny days, especially in Valdez. A lot of you guys commented and said you really loved the Valdez part of our series, and it was our favorite. That was our favorite time of Alaska. The town was nice. It was walkable. Like, it was just a nice little stop for us.
We expected Alaska to be rainy basically the whole time. You hear about all the rain in Alaska, and we thought every single day we were going to have our raincoats on. But when we got there, we got 2 weeks of sunshine. We were very surprised.
I think I got sunburned that week.
I think so too.
So yeah, it was a pleasant surprise on the weather there. Now, it did get rainy.
It did get rainy. So one thing we kind of regret is getting to Alaska in mid-June.
Yeah.
We heard that the beginning of June was really sunny, even some of May. So if you're planning your trip, weather-wise, I think the best bet is to get to Alaska by June, and you'll see the most sunny weather, because come July and August, the rain comes. In fact, this July was one of the top 10 wettest on record.
And there was times where it just would not stop raining and being cloudy, and the sun wouldn't come out, and I realized I really liked the beach during that time.
But what do they say? There's no bad weather, just bad clothes for the weather, or something like that.
Not
You
if
guys
ask
let us
me.
know in the comments. I don't know if I fully agree with that statement. That's what they say. That's what they say.
No, I don't know about all that.
Speaking of kind of weather-related things, number 4 was the mosquitoes. Another one. I expected to be just hounded by mosquitoes everywhere we went.
I've heard people describe them as clouds. Like you look up and there's just a cloud, but really it's just a whole swarm of mosquitoes. That's how bad they're supposed to be.
And don't get us wrong, there was a couple places we went where we experienced that.
It was terrible in a couple places, but there is a little trick to it. If you're not staying in like places that are grown up with a lot of vegetation, the mosquitoes aren't bad.
We used a lot less bug spray than I thought we were going to use overall in Alaska.
Although I think during the bad areas, we probably just stayed inside more.
That's probably true. But the coastal towns where there's a breeze, built up towns and cities, the mosquitoes weren't that bad there. And I just thought that they were going to be bad everywhere. And they were. So that was great.
It was a lot more manageable than I anticipated.
Number 5, Alaska has the best boondocking ever, right?
No.
This is the one where I know we're going to be disagreed with in the comments, but for us, and according to the apps we usually use, the methods we usually use to find our boondocking spots, having stayed in dozens and dozens of awesome boondocking locations in the lower 48 using these methods, they did not work in Alaska for finding the best boondocking ever, in our opinion. Our rig, our size.
But that's like 80% of the rigs out there. Like we weren't like a minority with the size of our rig out there. If you're in a truck camper or a smaller tow behind, you're probably the minority, honestly. There's just so many people driving Class C's that are close to the same length as us, and Class A's and fifth wheels and toy haulers. I just don't think the opportunity to boondock is as great out there as it has been in places here in the lower 48.
And it's not as well known. I don't think all the places are on iOverlander and Campendium and places like that, which is fine. You know what? If I lived in a state like Alaska, I wouldn't be putting it out there either. But it just means as a visitor, as an outsider coming in, you're gonna have a harder time finding those really good boondocking spots unless you have an inside source.
I also think, like, overall, the amount of people there is less. The amount of people RVing there is less than the lower 48, of course, which makes sense. So if there is, like, a trail or a road that goes to a nice boondocking spot, it's probably going to be, like, you just have to be okay with limbs and trees brushing against your vehicle and RV.
There are an abundance of roadside pullouts in Alaska, though, that you're allowed to camp on, which is something that's pretty different than the lower 48, and we definitely utilized those throughout our time as our quote-unquote boondocking.
Yeah.
Needless to say, finding boondocking in Alaska was a lot harder than we anticipated it to be. If you've got tips and tricks that you want to share with future Alaska travelers and tourists, put them in the comments.
Yeah.
And if you are appreciating our honesty and transparency and just letting you guys know our experience with our Alaska trip, we would really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. It's free and it really helps our channel a lot.
Yep, do that. Hit it. And then give us a like. Also, if you have not commented yet, go ahead and say hey. Hey. So our 6th thing, I don't know what we're calling these things you pick, but our 6th one, you probably already expected this. Alaska is expensive. However, hold on, wait a minute. I don't think you realize how expensive it is. Like, everything's costs a little bit more, and I don't know. We're just going to dive a little deeper into this real quick.
So we got shocked on both ends of the spectrum here because we knew Alaska would be expensive, but there was ways we found where we could save money and also things that were even more expensive than we expected them to be. I'm gonna talk a little bit on the saving money side of things here. You probably know about all the Alaska excursions and tours and things like that, and you should definitely save up some money to be able to do some. And we're gonna go over which ones we did and how much they cost in just a little bit. But there are also plenty of free things that you can do and self-guided things that you can do. There's hikes all over Alaska. Like we hiked the Harding ice field and it was awesome. We went panning for gold in Hatcher's Pass and we did it on our own in an area where you're just allowed to pan for gold on your own. Even while wildlife viewing. We got to go see some wildlife for free out on Skilac Lake Road.
Not the salmon, though.
Not the salmon. We could have seen those if we were at Russian River Falls at the right time, which we did go to, but missed them. That's the whole thing. We tried. But there was one area where we spent a lot more than we thought we were going to spend.
Yeah, we spent a lot on campgrounds. We also had to pay a lot for dry camping areas when we went to Anchorage, and Victoria bought me a ridiculous hat.
That wasn't in Anchorage. That was in Homer, actually.
Or Homer. I have PTSD from this dang fish hat, so sorry I got messed up.
Wear his halibut hat still, clearly.
It's hot now. What do you mean? It's been like 80-something degrees here. Well, I really will get looked at funny then wearing that thing.
Needless to say, it goes back to the difficulty finding free boondocking. So even when we did find dry camping, oftentimes you still had to pay to dry camp there.
Yeah. And there'd be no hookups. There wouldn't even be a dump station on site. It'd just be dry camping, and I don't know, like more than it should be, I feel like, just to be able to park your RV there.
It ranged anywhere from like $15 up to $40 a night for dry camping. Needless to say, the whole Alaska's expensive thing is true mostly overall, and we understand why. We're not trying to pretend like it shouldn't be. They're way up there. The resources are harder to get.
Yeah.
They have to close down half the year. We totally understand all those things. We were just surprised at where we were able to save money versus where we ended up spending more money than we initially thought going into Alaska. Number 7, and this is a big one. We're talking about wildlife and the fact that it is not guaranteed. We really thought, what did we think Alaska was going to be like?
I thought every time I got on Instagram or YouTube and somebody went to Alaska and they're showing all these videos and pictures of wildlife, that I'd be able to just look behind every tree or bush and see
find a bear.
Yeah. It was not the case. We saw, how many bears did we see?
In Alaska, I think we only saw one on Skilac Lake Road. We saw it twice. We're pretty sure it was the same bear. And then maybe one other while driving, like a little tiny glimpse of it. Real fast.
Yeah. So not many bears. We saw a handful of moose or mooses.
Meese? No, I'm just kidding. That's not how you say it.
The wildlife is a little more scarce than you think. I don't know. Maybe it was us. Maybe it was our timing.
This is the thing that you should understand, is that it's not guaranteed. You might be the person that it gets lucky and sees wildlife every other day. And you might be like us and you totally somehow accidentally miss every bear by just a few minutes. Who knows? You could also time things more correctly with the salmon, unlike us. And you can pay for excursions. Our friends that travel with us, Kaylin and Joseph, they went to Brooks Falls and they saw some grizzly bears, and it was awesome. Their footage was great. We didn't pay for any like bear viewing excursions, and we didn't really see any bears. We talked to some people that saw lots of bears not on excursions. It's just the luck of the draw. But
I think if your whole thing about going to Alaska is to see wildlife, make sure you have a lot of time that you can spend at random times. That'll give you your best chances of seeing wildlife. Like if somebody has said they spotted wildlife in a specific area, you can spend a lot more time there until you get to see whatever wildlife you want to see in that area. So that probably would help. And
maybe save up more money for excursions to get into some of those more remote places. But those excursions are the pricier ones because you're flying usually places. Cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Something that was also unexpected about the wildlife is that the salmon are on a much stricter schedule than I thought. I knew the salmon ran during the summer and there was different salmon runs, but they are literally, you'll have to look up the schedules. I think it changes year to year, but it's like they run for 2 weeks, they're off for 2 weeks. They run for a couple more weeks, then they're off. And when they're off, there's like no salmon, they're off.
When we were in Valdez, we kept running into people that are like, the salmon should be here any day now. Any day. And we were there for like 10 days and didn't see them. So. And
then as soon as we left Valdez and went up to the next town, they were like, oh, they just left and they're headed toward Valdez.
Yeah.
And we were like, what? They were gone. They were all gone. I didn't know they were so strict on the schedule. So maybe being flexible is key if wildlife is your thing, because then we could have obviously turned right back around and went back to Valdez, but we were going on to other things. So if wildlife is your top priority. Be very flexible, and like Craig said, be willing to spend a lot of time in places.
Yeah.
Number 8, let's talk about campgrounds. We already talked about the cost of campgrounds a little bit, but something that was just unexpected to me was the lack of full hookup campgrounds in general. Like, even if you were willing to pay for it, and not even just because they all got filled up and there wasn't any reservations left. Sometimes there just wasn't very many full hookups available.
Nah, it was a lot less. And then also, like, some of the campgrounds we went to, I think we had to use our 30.
Yeah, definitely
pigtail,
have
30 amp pigtail.
be able to do 30 amp if you're a 50 amp rig. Bring a 50 to 30 adapter, and be equipped with some kind of solar or generator or a way to have power without being hooked up at a campground, because you might not have that option. You might have to be dry camping.
Yeah.
And speaking of solar, number 9, we thought that lots of daylight equals lots of solar. Power forever.
Lots of daylight equals lots of solar. However, I didn't know there was places on Earth that just did not get daylight. Like, we went how many days did we go without daylight?
Not daylight, sunshine. There was light, but the sun was just not breaking through the clouds.
Yeah.
The layers and layers and layers of clouds. It must have been thick.
It was not great. It was very overcast, like most days, I would say.
In July.
Yeah. We ended up having to borrow Kaylin and Joseph's generator for a day. We kept trying to hold out, and although I say we kept trying to hold out, we kept running our coffee maker in the mornings. Like, we weren't trying to.
We're power hungry people, but in case you're new here, we have 2,800 watts of solar on our roof and 920 amp hours of batteries. So we're set up to be able to take in a lot of sun and hold quite a bit of it for our power needs. However, even with all that solar, and yes, we would get some on those super cloudy days, but it was not enough to keep our batteries charged.
No, so we ended up needing a generator. So just be ready to need to pop into a campground for a night to charge your battery bank back up, or take a generator with you.
Number 10, that really was probably the most shocking to me in the best way, was the landscape. I personally had this image of Alaska that was like mountainous and rocky and kind of like, you know, cold and barren, because you think of like the cold winters, harsh winters in Alaska.
Yeah.
What I definitely didn't expect was like the rainforest vibes along the coast.
Well, I didn't even know you could have a rainforest there. That was pretty interesting.
Valdez is a coastal temperate rainforest.
Yeah, and I don't know if how far that one stretches, or if there's multiple ones, that different rainforests in different areas of Alaska, but I don't know, it's pretty interesting. It's even more interesting to find out because that was our sunniest area with the least amount of rain.
But there was so much greenery, so much like lush landscapes and flowers.
Waterfalls?
And waterfalls everywhere. And the landscape just totally shocked me, and it was gorgeous and beautiful. And then of course there were places where we went, like our flight around Denali, where we got that crazy Alaska mountain vibes landscape too.
That's how I kind of mostly pictured Alaska being.
Yeah, we were totally shocked and surprised in the best way at the varied landscape all throughout Alaska that we got to see.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the question, was Alaska our best trip ever, and would we go back, and was it worth it, and all of those things?
No.
Well, I guess that was a lot of questions. No and yes here.
Yeah, mine was mostly just on average for all them questions was no.
We are so glad we went to Alaska.
Yeah.
I think it was worth it to do it this one time for us.
So for me, I really did enjoy the Alaska. Like, I enjoyed the excursions in Alaska. I enjoyed Valdez, like some of the areas we made it to. And if I knew going this time would be the only time that I could go, I would go. I would RV. I would drive from Florida, wherever I am, and well, right now we're in North Carolina, and I would drive there and go see it and do RV Alaska. Now that I've done it though, there's no chance I drive 4,000 and something miles one way to go to Alaska again. There's absolutely no chance. If I want to see Alaska again, I'm gonna fly in, rent an RV, and then fly out when I'm done at seeing everything. Maybe take a cruise to Alaska. I don't know. It's not going to be drive an RV from the East Coast all the way to Alaska. That was just too much. The driving was a lot. But another thing you got to think about is the amount of wear and tear you're putting on the RV, and not just because of the bad roads. These RVs are built to RV in a handful of times a year. Even the ones that are like they're full-time RV rated or whatever, it's not. It's made to RV a few times a year, and we just did 5 years worth of traveling in this thing
in one summer.
Yeah. So the amount we're going to be paying for wear and tear for the next few months on this thing, probably. Like the solar panel flying off the roof,
which you may or may not have seen yet. I'm not sure.
It would have lasted another 3 years before that would have ever even been an issue if we hadn't went to Alaska. Our leaf spring breaking, that wouldn't have happened. It's just and I'm sure there's more stuff down the road to come, just from the amount of miles we did. And saying all that, sounds like I just did not really enjoy Alaska. I absolutely did. Ice climbing, oh my gosh, I would do it again right now.
When else could we have ever gotten that opportunity? And it feels blasphemous to say in a way, because so many people, either their dream is to go to Alaska, or they go to Alaska and they absolutely love it and they can't wait to go back
and want to move there. I don't know where you
move there. It was their best trip ever. And this just, I guess, goes to show that people enjoy different things, and we enjoyed it. But it's not on our, top list of places that we would go back to again and again and again. And
I am not knocking anybody. If you absolutely love that kind of like weather and terrain and everything, Alaska is for you. Do it 100%. Yes. If this was, again, if you get one opportunity to do Alaska and it involves you driving an RV there, do it. Yeah. Absolutely. You're going to love it. It's going to be a phenomenal trip. I'm glad we did it the way we did for our first trip, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's our answer. Hopefully we didn't step on anybody's toes here.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, good job. If you are living out there, you went and visited, and now you live there, and you're sticking out them winters. Holy smokes!
I don't understand you, but I admire you.
That's crazy.
We're from Florida. You got to remember. Yeah. We don't comprehend the snow in those amounts.
Anyways, we're moving on. Yeah, that's enough of that. Alaska's awesome. Go to it if you haven't. Set your dates. Make a trip. Plan it and do it, and like it or hate it. I don't know. At least you did it. Let's
talk. Okay, we're gonna go through some stats real quick. We're about to get to cost, but let's talk about where we went in Alaska, our trip. Okay, so we drove up the Alcan to Alaska and entered Alaska on June 16th. And then we left Alaska on August 24th, spending a total of 69 nights there. We started in Tok, traveled to Valdez, then Seward, spent some time on the Skilac Lake Road area near Cooper Landing, then to Homer, up to the Anchorage area where we boondocked near Matanuska Glacier, and then up on Hatcher's Pass. Then we went to Houston, Alaska for our Denali flight out of Talkeetna. Then we went up to Fairbanks, kind of skipping our planned boondocking in Denali National Park, visited Chicken, and then took the top of the world highway out of Alaska to Dawson City. So we did kind of a clockwise route through Alaska. Yeah. And some people do a counterclockwise route. Some people go up to Fairbanks first, though, because they have the Midnight Sun Festival at the end of June, which would have been fun to attend as well.
Oh, and 4th of July has that car launch. Where's that at?
Glacier View. Yeah. The car launch. I kind of wish we had made an effort to attend.
I do too. Everybody posted videos about it, so I'm like, oh, we missed it.
Now, in terms of where we stayed in Alaska, we do have GPS coordinates to every place we stay, literally ever, along with points of interest and restaurants and things like that on a Google map for our community members. So if that's something you're interested in, something you want, you can go to wildrvlife.com/community and find out more about that. One thing you should know, though, is that you're going to be backtracking. It's not just a circle. Like, you're going to have to go out on a road and then come back up and go out on another road and come back up, and you're going to pass through Anchorage, several times.
It is nice to be able to stop in Anchorage though as often as you will get to, because they do have Costco, they have grocery stores, just different places that you'll be familiar with.
We kept needing to go to Best Buy for some reason.
Yeah, different things like that. So it worked out. Anchorage is a good little kind of hub, like a start over point, you know, to get refilled and fueled and everything and get back out there.
All right, so our excursions and costs. Let's talk about it. So what did we do in Alaska?
Y'all better buckle y'all seatbelt or harnesses.
Hold on to your wallet, because all that money is about to try to fly away.
Hey,
Okay, first up, halibut fishing. Cost about $500 a person.
the next excursion we did was the sailing charter, which was about $350 a person.
Including kayaking and the resurrection day.
Yeah, and he had us a little snack and everything on board as well.
Ice climbing, we did on Matanuska Glacier, about $300 a person. It was an pretty much all day excursion climbing on the glacier. Lots of fun.
Then we flew around Denali with the glacier landing. It was $700 a person, so that was one of our more expensive excursions we did.
They have cheaper options, so to do a Denali flight, you don't have to spend $700 a person. We chose the most expensive one with a glacier landing, to be totally honest.
Yep.
Next up, we went to Chena Hot Springs and the Ice Museum, which was about $40 a person.
And then we did the Thunderbirds, which, good night, that was so stinging expensive. No, I'm just kidding, it was free. The Thunderbirds was free. They had, man, if you're there and they're doing a show or whatever, you have to go. It was so good. They have so many different vendors and stuff there for free. It could have been a weekend long thing you did, because it went for multiple days.
Yeah, 3 days. And I believe they do it every other year.
Yeah, yeah, and it's super worth it. Like, you would not be disappointed. I mean, how could you be disappointed for a free activity, you know? Yeah.
And last, we panned for gold, which costs us about $50 in gold panning supplies that is now sitting in our RV storage bay, and maybe we'll get to use them one day again, and maybe we won't.
I don't know why she says it like that. I know it feels like it wasn't worth it, especially when we have find any gold.
I had so much fun though. It was great. I will relive the moment where Craig is like, holy smokes, look at this big old piece of gold. And then we found out.
She thought it was gold too. Don't let her fool you.
It was great. So total, we spent close to $4,000 on excursions.
Yeah.
So now let's pick our two favorite.
My two top favorite were, in this order, ice climbing, of course.
That's my favorite too.
Yeah,
Number one.
And then I think the halibut fishing, just thinking back on the whole thing, it started out pretty rocky for me. Didn't catch much for most of the first half of it. But looking back on it, that's probably my second top excursion. My
second one is probably the Denali flight, because I just couldn't put into words what it was like to be flying around those mountains and being so close to them, right, and looking down on them. I still see it. I'm still struggling with the words. It was really cool, and landing on the glacier. Now, our fuel costs to get all the way from Idaho through Canada to Alaska, driving around Alaska, back through Canada, and all the way to Michigan. Our total fuel cost was $4,625. I don't have the exact mileage. We didn't track it. I just tracked how much we spent. So that's how much we spent. So you can expect to spend probably something similar. And last, groceries and eating out. I'm not going to share our exact numbers because I just don't think it's helpful. We eat out more than most people. We might spend more or less on groceries than you. But what it comes down to is that you should expect to spend about 30 to 40% more on average for groceries and eating out. I think every meal near about on average was about $30 a person when we ate out. So. And that wasn't like a fancy restaurant or anything like that. That's before tip, before drinks, before anything else. Like we typically drink water when we go out to eat. If you stock up on food in Anchorage, the prices are more similar in groceries as to what you might be paying anywhere else in the United States. However, you're going to end up grocery shopping and shopping locally like we did in these little towns where it's a lot more expensive. So on average, just expect whatever your current monthly grocery and eating out bill is to go up by 30 to 40%.
I will say a nice surprise though was to find out that fuel was as cheap as it was. It was cheap, so you got to go through Canada. It's expensive in Canada, and you get to Alaska and you're expecting the same. But it was pretty on par with like places here in the lower 48. It wasn't so different. I'm sure it was higher than some states and lower than others. It's most certainly lower than California, so there is that.
And that's it. That wraps up our summary of Alaska and how it was not exactly what we expected, but still a very amazing summer.
Yeah.
And if you found this video helpful, we would love it if you would give it a thumbs up.
And let us know if you've been to Alaska. Do you feel the same or do you feel different than how we do?
Yeah.
I'm very curious actually.
Because the more we get everybody talking in the comments, the more helpful it's going to be to future people who are watching this video and planning their Alaska trip.
I feel like we might be a minority in this, the way we feel about Alaska. And again, we did not hate Alaska, guys, okay?
Yeah.
Don't come for us in the comments. I did not hate Alaska. It was fun.
We loved it.
Just let us know what you thought about it if you've been. And then if you got any good tips, leave them down below for people that are planning on going, because there is a bunch of people that have commented to us and reached out to us that are planning a trip next year.
And finally, I just want to say thank you to everyone who watches our videos every week. We do this for you guys, and we so appreciate that you're here with us. We would not be doing it without you. We could not do it without you. So thank you.
And I want to say a special thank you for everybody that is subscribed and helped us, because we just hit 50,000 subscribers. It was just pretty amazing and would have never thought would have happened. It's because of you guys that we were able to hit this milestone, and we just appreciate you so much.
We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.